All right, Ry Guy, let's move on. Episode 4. We finally get our Haas episode. Everybody loves the Haas episodes in Drive to Survive.
Episode 4, A Mountain to Climb. So we get our
Very
first...
on the nose with that name.
Yes. We get our first meme episode. I consider this episode a meme.
Right. It's Guenther climbing mountains in Italy.
Yes.
Basically, throughout the entire... It's like cliffhanger spliced into an episode of Drive to Survive. You just constantly get shots of him and his boys climbing up the Tyrol Mountains in Italy, right?
This episode is basically Guenther mountain climbing while complaining about his job all the time, the entire episode, and then the Mazepins just terrorizing the Haas garage, really. Just being terrorists in the garage.
That was really
painful
wild.
Episode.
It was wild to see. That's what you and when we were sitting here before recording, that's what I was saying to you. That was like an extremely uncomfortable episode to watch.
Yeah, it was fucking brutal.
It's just, we've joked before, and I've tried to defend to some extent Guenther Steiner and Haas and stuff like that. There just seems to be such an epic. I mean, again, though,
it's an extremely dysfunctional team.
But we know that they in the past have sort of played up that certain drivers have rough relationships that we feel like don't, right? Like Carlos Sainz and Lando. I think it's easy to make Mazepin a villain. I think obviously we know he is.
Well, after this episode, I was like, God, this guy.
They make Mick look like he's just like head down, never has a complaint. They made it like he's the shining sun. They did a whole devil on one shoulder, Nikita Mazepin and Dmitry, his father, are the devil, and then you have Mick Schumacher.
What are you trying to say, though?
Obviously, that's what they were trying to paint, is what I'm saying. And I know
but are you saying that Mick is not an angel?
Yeah, I don't think he's an angel because remember, there were parts where he started getting into some wars of words with
Mazepin.
Right,
of course he's not. No driver's an angel. They're all out to get theirs.
So we have to get into the ridiculous, like Aldi furniture photo shoot that Nick and Guenther did.
I was like, wait, what am I watching? Guenther is spying out a little boat, a wooden sailboat?
It was so weird. Like, it started off and it seemed normal.
That just shows you how tough times are at Haas. Like, Guenther,
I know.
It's like, dance, monkey, dance. We need this Aldi money. Go play with that boat.
Like, it starts off, and it seems like it could be a normal photo shoot where Mick Schumacher is, like, standing by a desk and holding, putting his fists onto the desk. And then all of a sudden, they're, like, wheeling out like miniature dog houses and like baby boats, and like Guenther's having to squat down, and like Guenther and Mick are like poking their heads out of this miniature like playhouse.
Yeah.
it turned into like this weird photo shoot so quickly.
Very weird. I mean, I just picture Guenther going to bed at night and he's like, is this what I dreamed of Formula One being like?
Yeah.
Formula One is shilling playboats.
So the rest, that photo shoot was so funny though. That if you haven't seen it already, wait till you get to that.
Did you enjoy the clear as day Guenther Steiner denial campaign that he had cooked up in his head to answer all the questions from the media about Mazepin? Where he's like, I don't think he's an oligarch. He's a
fertilizer guy.
He's a big fertilizer guy. One of the best in the world, actually.
And then when they're like, what about that color scheme on your new car? He's like,
he said Russian color scheme, yeah.
Could be the American flag. A lot of flags have red, white, and blue, you know?
Yeah, I was like, man, this is just... It's something like you would hear from the White House, just like a denial campaign. Deny.
Yeah, the rest of my notes are just all about the crazy Mazepin family saga that played out. So, first off, Dmitry Mazepin's haircut is so ridiculous.
Well, they're like twins.
When he first was walking up, I was like, I can't tell right away which one's which for this entire episode.
I'm not entirely convinced that Nikita is Dimitri's son. I think he's his brother, secretly.
Twin brother, maybe.
They are so identical looking, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, ridiculous haircuts, can't tell them apart.
Dmitry, very hands-on.
Oh, yeah. And you could tell, the guy is super, like, paranoid.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's like, are we okay with this about the cameras? And like, we can we talk about this? And he and Nikita are constantly just bitching about everything in Russian. And you have Dmitry basically trying to... They get into the whole bullshit where Nikita Mazepin is struggling with the car. Mick Schumacher is not struggling as much. And so it immediately goes into why is he faster than me on the straights? Why is he handling the tires?
It's a campaign about why his car isn't as good.
Right. It's different cars. It's the conspiracy theory stuff that
so dumb.
You guys are doing either different components, different cars, whatever. And you have Ryan, we know Haas is, and they mentioned it on this episode obviously multiple times, they're just trying to tread water to get to this season that is about to start.
Yeah.
And you have Dimitri like, hey, Guenther, I mean, why don't we just build him a new car? I think we're going to have to build him a brand new car. We know that eventually they ended up doing that, and then he destroyed it like one race later, right?
Yeah, and then it came out a couple weeks ago that Nikita's dad demanded that they gave Nikita Mick's floor halfway through the season.
Right.
You remember that?
Right, and Mick had an ill-fitting seat for the majority of the season.
Just extremely dysfunctional team, Haas is.
Yeah.
I mean, they're akin to the formerly known as the Washington Redskins. Like, think of the most dysfunctional sports organizations in the world. I use the Washington Commanders as an example because they're extremely dysfunctional, but that is F1's version of that. Haas. It's just been a disaster, that team.
Yeah.
Been a disaster.
So it starts off, Nikita Mazepin over the radio is basically like so aggressive and berating
so pointed.
all the engineers, and just like there's no helpful discussion going on. He's just like, this is bullshit. This thing is he just kept saying how everything was undrivable. And where you had more shit talking, where one of the times Christian Horner, we had heard before where he made the comment like, stay away from Mazepin or be careful around Mazepin. But I don't remember the quote, which they played the full one of him on the radio, where then he's saying like, the guy's a fucking joke or something. Like he was like, he's awful.
Yeah. I mean, heading into this episode, everyone in the world knew that Nikita was probably some kind of brat, right? Some kind of rich brat. We got mega confirmation in this episode.
Right. Because then after...
And everything was so touch and go. Like the instant you try to somewhat confront him, he would just start heating up immediately.
Yeah. And you have him like being disrespectful as hell and aggressive over the radio.
To everyone.
To everybody. And then it continues in the garage, and then it continues in the debrief at the table.
Yeah.
And Guenther's like, hey, let's have a little chat in my office after this debrief. And they have the closed door discussion where, again, Nikita's like, well, I have to be mean like this. I can't be a pussy.
Yeah, he pushed back on everything,
Yeah.
like literally pushed back. And then it got to the point where Guenther started caving in that conversation.
Yeah, because he's basically just like, it's not the same car and it's not drivable. And I don't know what he's doing, but it can't be the same car because I can't drive it on the soft tire.
Yeah, it was just painful. I wrote this note specifically for you, Moo, because I think you'll agree. At one point in the episode, Guenther is walking with Crofty. And Crofty's asking him questions about the team and about Mazepin. And Guenther's answering them, like, honestly. And I was just thinking when I was watching that, I was like, Crofty is the last guy I would spill the beans to in the paddock.
Yeah, we know he can bloviate.
He's got a big fat mouth. His loose lips will sink ships. Why would you ever tell Crofty anything?
Yeah, and it's an interesting relationship that, we saw the dancing that Mick and Guenther were doing for money, right? Where they're doing the epic, ridiculous photo shoot. But then your title sponsor, you almost have this like weird combative relationship too, where at one point Dimitri, when everything keeps going on about the cars not being the same and all he basically says, yeah, I'm going to put a layer together from your old collie and say, give us a new car or we're pulling our sponsorship and we're leaving like overnight.
Right.
And then that rumor obviously gets spread to other people that tell Guenther. And then Guenther, this is why I'm saying the relationship with your title sponsor, that he's saying, well, we have a contract, so no, that's not going to happen. And,
Do you have the conspiracy theory clip handy?
The audio of the X-Files, basically, conspiracy theory.
Hit it. You're going to like this one. This is good.
We already have that Nikita and Dmitry are actually twins or maybe the same person.
Oh, that's no conspiracy theory. If we do a blood test, Nikita is his brother. Anyways, here's my conspiracy theory, okay? Maybe you'll buy into this, maybe you won't. I think Haas purposely retired Mick's car in Sochi
Really?
to appease the Mazepins. It's,
Yeah,
it's the home race in Russia. Things were getting really tense in the garage because Nikita just can't deliver. Mick is smoking him.
Yeah.
The way the retirement was odd.
that.
They were
Right.
like, it's a decay thing. You just got to get to the pits.
Right. Yeah,
I
can
have
see
a.
that.
I, there's
I
a
like that conspiracy theory.
there's
That's
a
good one.
percentage in my head that is a possibility.
I also liked, Ryan, that the strategy, they made it seem like Mazepin basically like finished in the top 5 in that race.
I want to be clear.
He was unlapping himself was what was going on like at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to be clear about this episode. I hated this episode. It was so unnecessary. No one wanted this episode. We didn't.
Yeah.
Nikita Mazepin did not need an entire fucking episode. Why couldn't he have just been one of the young drivers in one of the young driver episodes?
I'm sure that, and we've talked about this before, Ryan, I'm sure they have all sorts of storylines that they edit and because they have to start working on this thing. You can't wait till the end of the season, right?
Right.
I imagine that they're editing storylines that then don't get put in. I have a feeling that because this thing came out after Russia invaded Ukraine and oligarchs are all the rage, everyone's talking about oligarchs and sanctioning oligarchs, right? That's why I have a feeling this one might have been basically put in last minute before it dropped just for that. There's my conspiracy theory, I guess.
I disagree because they're
always going to do a Haas episode because Guenther is
now that
a wild character for that show.
Since the invasion happened, I doubt. This is why I don't think they put it in after the invasion as a reaction to the invasion. F1 hates that Earl Colley is all over that episode.
Yeah, I mean that's because that's the thing. It's also after they're out of Formula One.
But you see what I'm saying?
Like they've both been booted and have left, and before Drive to Survive came out.
I'm actually surprised that it didn't get left on the cutting room floor. Like, and they just didn't drop it at the last second, and it's a 9-episode season.
So let's talk about some of the other stuff. So then you have the shot of Mazepin going back to Moscow before the race in Sochi and trying to get his mind right.
Yeah. Do you think that
and just the epic modern home mansion that they live in?
Yeah. Do you think? I was thinking about this when it said on the screen, Moscow, Russia. I was like, man, if you're the camera crew for this part of the show and you have to fly to the Mazepin's lair, you got to be kind of nervous. You're dealing with an oligarch. You're on his home turf. They're aggressive people. Like, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, and then we got to see Nikita do his boxing training with his Russian trainer.
Yeah.
And the funniest part of the whole fitness bit they did was then doing like that stretch where
it's like a stretch hug.
Yeah, it looks like they're like about to grapple, in like Greco-Roman wrestling. They put their hands on each other's like shoulders and back, and then they just bend over and like basically touch heads while they're stretching out their shoulders and their arms or something.
Yeah, something else I realized watching this episode was, for all the working out we get to see Mazepin doing, he's the least fit driver on the grid, like easily the doughiest.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I think, just the face too. The Mazepin,
think so?
Their face is kind of, it looks like it's just weird, I guess is what I'm saying. Like there's no, you're right, definition. He doesn't feel like there's any definition to his body or his face.
He looks soft to me. He also has one of the worst mustaches I've ever seen, ever.
Yeah, it's too bad. He was going to be, for sure, the worst facial hair on the grid if he was racing this season because he even let it grow out more, trying to do like a beard. So it was this crazy patchiness all over his face. And it's that blonde, like translucent hair on his face,
Yeah. So unless you have any other notes, we should wrap up this episode with the mountain climbing.
Yeah. I just thought, Ryan, the big story, like I mentioned, in Sochi when it starts raining, you have Mazepin make the call to switch to inters very early before the rain has picked up.
Yeah, you want to know why he can do that? Because there's zero risk. He's dead fucking last.
But I do appreciate, we've talked about this with other drivers, right? Dictate what you want. Like you could still in the end be like, I'm coming in. I want inters.
Well, nobody dictates what they want more than Nikita Mazepin.
Exactly. But I just thought it was funny that he was so proud of himself that he thought he was like not even a weatherman. He thought he was like a shaman when it comes to Russian weather. He was like, I remember seeing clouds just like that when I was a kid, and then it starts raining 5 minutes
I
later.
forgot about that, dude.
And then after the race,
After
remember
he
he
was
was like,
like-
did you like that call for
was like,
Inters?
hey.
I told you.
He was like, good
I
call,
know these
huh?
Russian clouds, yeah.
Yeah, fuck off.
And like we said, they make it seem like he races up into the points. He's unlapping himself at the end of the race when he's on
know.
Inters.
Such a joke. Oh, and he beat Latifi and someone else.
Yeah, it
Who
was that
it?
you beat Mick and Latifi because Mick retired and Latifi.
Latifi retired too, I think.
That's probably what they always say when people retire from a race.
Yeah.
Hey, Nikita, you beat this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, what a mess.
So, yeah, that was it. And then, obviously, we can get back to the mountain now because Guenther, throughout this episode, is still climbing.
Yeah, I'm going to get nerdy on you here for a second. I would love to know the logistics of that shooting for this episode. Because
I was thinking the same because
there's a cameraman with them.
Right. And
Is he
it's
climbing?
very, like, shallow, very rocky
Yes.
faces that they're climbing on that they're having to, tether themselves into the chains and hooks that have been fixed into that mountain by previous climbers and stuff, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it just feels like there's some guy with a massive camera who's like right next to her in front of him. There was a lot of drone stuff you could tell in some of the shots, but other
Well,
ones...
they had the camera at the summit with the cross with him and also a drone shot. So
Yeah.
that means that either he hiked up there with them or the chopper dropped the camera guy off.
Yeah, it could have been some chopper work
Something
too,
like.
maybe.
I'm just interested to know if a cameraman did the hike with Guenther.
But then also like one of the most cringy shots maybe in Drive to Survive history where when they get to the top where the cross is, then they
Guenther's
do
holding the ice axe.
Yeah, the final shot of the episode is Guenther standing there in front of the cross with the ice pick, and he raises it up like he just climbed, like K2 or something.
Dude.
And the drone just backs out, and he stands there just holding that pose in front of the cross for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
The only thing that was missing was a hammer to go with that sickle.
Right. Well, that would have been the bit when they're
hold
further
up
away, you see his other hand come up and cross the hammer to
He's like, "Hail Russia!
right.
Hail Earl Colley!"
Yeah. So that shot, I mean, if you
Fuck, that's so funny.
buckle up for that one because that one
Hey,
will make you laugh.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think they were pounding when they reached the top?
Yeah, it looked like rosé or something.
Yeah, I thought it was rosé too.
And
but
the guy
then-
was like nectar of the gods or something.
what dude calls rosé nectar of
But
the
it
gods?
looked, like
Kinda lame.
rosé. It was weird.
Yeah,
I was
I
trying
don't-
to figure that out too. It looked like rosé.
First of all, what dudes call rosé nectar of the gods? Secondly, what dudes pound a bottle of rosé to the face?
Yeah, you climb this epic, rocky, impressive, whole mountain chain in Italy, get to the cross, and then decide you're
Let's
gonna
pound
have
some rosé.
You want rosé as your we conquered it.
Guenther was like, "You guys want some rosé or some frosé?"
Unbelievable. Yeah, he brought his blender. I mean, if we're bringing these cameras up here, we might as well bring
Yeah.
a blender and
Yeah.
make some margaritas or something that Guenther's going to do.
I thought it might be like a very red-looking whiskey for a second, but then I was like, "No, man, that's got to be rosé or
Yeah,
something."
way too red. I think it was rosé, but interesting stuff. Very funny that closing shot of that episode, right?
That's the most European thing ever. It's 3 dudes hiking to the top of a mountain, and then they're all lipping a rosé together.
Yeah, Guenther, I was kind of impressed. I mean, Guenther also looks like a real spindly guy, but he seemed to be moving around pretty well. You could see how short of breath he was with the thinner air and everything. Yeah.
Those are his home mountains, man. That's the region he's
Right.
from.
That's right, because isn't that the whole reason he was doing it? He was like, my uncle or somebody
Something like
did
that.
this back in the day. Yeah. And he
Yeah.
wanted to connect with nature and his family, I guess.
Yes. And boy, did he.